dun. Playing the same note over and over again with the same pitch, with the same pace, with the same volume can be extremely boring and monotonous. So when you're doing a public presentation, you have to act as if you're playing music. You have to change the pace, you have to change the pitch, and you also have to change the volume, because that's what's going to help grab people's attention. That's what's going to stir feelings in your audience. First, the volume. Sometimes you might want to speak louder, and sometimes you might want to speak with a softer voice. What will decide the volume is often related to the importance of what you're saying. If you're trying to accentuate a point you think is very important, that's going to naturally increase the volume of your voice. Of course, you've got to decide what is most important, because if you end up talking as if everything's important, the volume of your voice is going to stay loud all the time, and that's going to cancel everything out, and really nothing will appear more important. And again, you're going to be very monotonous because the volume of your voice will not change. You can think about it like the drop in music, okay? If you're in a club or if you're listening to a certain type of techno music, you'll notice that the sound will decrease, the volume will decrease, it'll go down, go down, go down, go down, and it'll go back up, 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 and suddenly you get the bass drop, okay? And that's essentially what gets everybody crazy. But it's coming from a change in volume. That's what's having the impact. And so it's really important to make use of that volume change. That is also true for the pace at which you are speaking. Think about a radio advertisement. You see often the core of the advertisement is read quite slowly. They enunciate what they're saying. They particularly enunciate the name of the brand, so you know what they are saying. But something they don't enunciate very well and read very quickly and will really increase the pace at which they are speaking, you know when that is? That's when they're reading the small prints. That's when they're reading the terms and conditions, because they don't think that's important for you. Obviously it is, but it's not important for them, that's for sure. So they want to read it as fast as possible. And also it makes sure, just like the drop, that when you're changing the volume, that when you're changing the pace to something slower and louder, people are really going to listen. The reason why it's perhaps difficult for you to change the volume, or it's difficult for you to change the pace, it's perhaps because you have learned your presentation by heart, or what you've done is you're reading the presentation, and that is lethal when it comes to being able to speak from the heart. To overcome that, try and use the outline. The outline will help you to point out the primary points and the secondary points, and allows you to be able to make sure that you think about changing the volume and changing the pace. It's something I talk about in my course, and it is very important to avoid a monotonous delivery. Now, tone. You may be thinking, how am I going to change the tone of my voice? Well, you naturally do it. In English, for example, we have the question mark. And when we use the question mark, we naturally change the tone of our voice, don't we? We just need to make sure that we also do it when we're doing our presentation. If you're struggling with changing the tonality of your voice when you're doing a presentation, it might be an issue with your outline. For example, is it possible that in your outline there's nothing but statements? And so what you're doing is you're basically saying one statement after another. This is this, and that is that. And of course, that's really making your voice monotonous. But what about changing one of the statements for a rhetorical question? Something that will change the tonality of your voice. Or why not put an exclamation mark after one of the statements that you're making? Because that will force you to think about how you're going to say it. If you look at a music sheet, there are certain words that are written on that music sheet, like forte, fortissimo, or piano, pianissimo. There are ways to remind the musician that it needs to be played either perhaps with more strength, or that perhaps it needs to be played softer. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to remove your personality from the presentation. If you think about a musician, when he sees piano, he knows he needs to play the music softer. But everybody understands piano or softer in different ways. If you want to make sure that your changes of pace, pitch, and volume are natural and don't seem robotic, think about how what you're telling your audience, how did that make you feel when you found out about it? And instead of telling the audience, this is how it made me feel, express these feelings in the way that you are talking. Make sure to vary pace, pitch, and volume so that you can speak up.